Hello and welcome back to another episode. And in this episode, I have got a guest speaker with me, which is Cam Fraser. He's a certified professional sex coach and certified sexologist. Being a former tantric yoga teacher, his work integrates scientifically validated, medically accurate information about sexual health with sacred sexuality teachings from the mystery traditions. As a coach, he helps men go beyond the surface level sex and into full-bodied, self-expressed, pleasure-orientated sexual experiences free of anxiety or shame. Welcome to our podcast.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm usually starting with a question. Every guest speaker, I ask them where they're currently at on their self-love and pleasure journey and what brings you the most pleasure.
Yeah, my current iteration of my journey is um, finding the time and the space to do it as a parent of a toddler. And one of the things that is inhibiting that journey at the moment is like I'm tired at the end of the day of being a parent and working and navigating a marriage and a social life and all those things. So really resonating with parents at the moment and uh, their the barriers to entry for exploring their pleasure and going on that journey. What brings me the most pleasure at the moment is I've got this really like little practice that I do at nighttime where I'm moving my body when I stand up and moving my hips and like loosening up through my lower back. I've got lower back injuries, and so I get quite stiff and quite sore in my lower back from sitting at my laptop all day and jumping on calls. So I have this like really beautiful little self pleasure practice, which involves like being nude, moving my hips, moving my body around, maybe watching a little bit of pornography, maybe not, but just allowing my body to move freely after like being stagnant and stationary and picking my son up all day. Like there's a lot of pressure on my lower back. So just like that little simple practice is what's been bringing me a lot of pleasure. And then I just build on it with more toys or other, masturbatory style stimulation. But just the simple act of moving my lower back and moving my body in a bit of a free way, like a belly dancer moving their hips is something that brings me pleasure at the moment.
I love that. And I can totally relate to being a parent, being a business owner, and just like you've got so many things to do. And by the end of the day, you're just exhausted. And this is such a beautiful ritual to like loosen yourself up and step into your body space just to like rest and find some pleasure. Love that.
Yeah, thank you.
This is a great episode because I do have quite a lot of guys and men following me and listening to the podcast. Thank you all, by the way. And I do get quite a few people reaching out with some challenges that they face. And this is why I thought it would be great to jump on here. But I also get quite a few comments, and I'm going to start with that one because I review pleasure toys, and I've got over 200 of these toys. And I do get quite a few comments sometimes from men reaching out and saying, are you sure a man can still please you? And if you would have all these, like if you would have me, you wouldn't need all these toys. And how should I now compete with that? And I think we dive into this question because that will probably unreveal like some challenges that men are facing. Why do you think men would feel intimidated by pleasure toys, or why would they compare themselves to pleasure toys?
Well, I think comparison is a big part of men's sexual experiences, regardless of whether with its toys, like they're comparing themselves to each other. There's a lot of competition and comparison between like men talking about sex in the locker room. And I've been in plenty of locker rooms in my time. I was a collegiate athlete, and the way that men try to one up each other with regards to like the way that they talk about their sexual experiences is very prevalent in those spaces. So I think like
Yeah.
that's part of their sexual their sexual approach is comparison and competition. I know a lot of guys compare themselves to pornography, for example, and I work with a lot of guys who have either penis size anxiety or like body image issues because they're comparing themselves to either porn or social media influencers, like guys that are at the gym on steroids and having this false perception of like the ideal male body and what's realistic. It's like I know a lot of guys comparing in that department as well. So I think I use those as examples because I think it's like and not, it's not inherent. I think it's a learned part of our sexual approach or our mentality around sex is to compete and compare with one another. Then that gets extended to toys, and what I think the fear is, as you articulated with some of these comments, is that, oh, I can't do that. My penis isn't that big, or my penis doesn't vibrate, or I can't, like, I can't compete with the technology. There's not, I don't have that capacity. So the fear there is like, well, and the fear is rooted in like what they can and can't do with their penis for the most part, right? It's like very revolved around stimulation. And it's like, well, people aren't just looking for stimulation from sex, right? Like people aren't just looking for, I mean, and women, I speak to enough women about sex toys as well. Like women aren't just looking for a, um, 12-inch dildo, which is what guys kind of think of, right? When they think of like them being replaced, it's like, oh, it's going to be bigger than me. I can't compete with that. And it's like, yeah, but you're not just your dick, man. Stop reducing yourself down to just your penis. Like you are everything else that's attached to a penis, right? Like and so I think part of the mentality that a lot of men have around sex is that it's just revolving around their genitals and what they can and can't do. And I see that a lot with guys who are like concerned that because they don't have as much reliable erections, that they can't have sex anymore, right? Because they need an erect penis to have sex. And it's like, well, that's not true. There's so many other ways you can be sexual with your partner that don't involve putting your penis in a vagina. And so, yeah, the phallocentric mentality that a lot of men have around sex, I think, is what also leads to some of the fear of them being replaced by a dildo or by a vibrator. I know there's a lot of stigma around vibrators as well, and like some of the sacred sexuality communities that I run in, that it's like desensitizing and numbing and all that sort of stuff, which is, I mean, I don't want to dismiss people's lived experiences. Some women do describe that they feel desensitized and that they've had wonderful experiences by taking away their vibrator. That's fine. I'm not here to say that that's wrong or not valid. But I think diversity and variety is important. And so I think like a lot of guys, because they're locked into like, this is what sex has to look like, to deviate from that is like meaning that they're inadequate, right? If they can't like satisfy their partner or do everything that they need to do with just this penis in vagina sex, and maybe like a tiny little bit of sprinkling of foreplay. So like this lack or this narrowness, right, of what sex is supposed to look like as well, I think it lends itself to insecurities and feelings of inadequacy. And there's a lack of sex education. A lot of guys think that like they should be able to give their partners orgasms from hard and fast like penetrative sex, right? And it's like, sure, that's one way of having sex, but for a large majority of people, it's not the most pleasurable way of having sex. And so there's a lack of education around like clitoral stimulation, or even like what the clitoris is. It's not just this little button that you're pressing, but it's this like big complex of legs and bulbs, and being able to like understand that about your partner's anatomy. Like guys don't get that education. They're just kind of maybe mimicking what they see in pornography. Also, not a lot of sex toys in mainstream porn as well. Like not a lot of women using vibrators in mainstream porn. Not a lot of like sex toy representation in that very traditional, like stereotypical hardcore porn. It's always just penis in vagina sex. A lot of guys are watching that thinking that's what I've got to do. That's what sex looks like. So it's a whole myriad of factors, and insecurity as well is definitely a part of it. Guys just feeling insecure and feeling like they're the ones responsible for women's pleasure. And so it's kind of that mentality kind of strips women of that agency and autonomy to explore pleasure for themselves. And so I know a lot of guys, that's wrapped up in maybe like some old school sexist ways of thinking about sex, and women are the ones that receive pleasure from men. They don't have any agency to like experience it themselves. So for them to like use toys is kind of implicitly recognizing that, well, no, women do have agency of their pleasure, and they do want to experience pleasure, and they do want to stimulate and masturbate and do all these things. And so I think that can kind of create some dissonance for guys as well, because they kind of adhere to a bit of a like old paradigm. The word is sexist, worldview. I don't know, I'm just rambling now, but those are some thoughts that come to my mind that really like intersect with that fear around sex toys for guys.
And you've covered like a good range of all of that. And all of this could be reasons why someone is, yeah, feeling intimidated or compares themselves. Education, I think, is a huge one because I'm also doing adult content creation. So I do have like an OnlyFans page where I actually show and use these toys. So that market on the other side, but actually like female pleasure orientated, and really like using a clitoris stimulation. And some of them, like when they approach me on my fans page, they're like, wow, I didn't even know that you need to use this
Mm-hmm.
toy this way, or that you could incorporate this, or that you've always got like your clitoral, like your clit stimulation, you're always fingering yourself, or you're still rubbing even though you're doing penetrative stimulation. And I'm like, yes, this is like how I receive it, and most women actually need clitoral stimulation, so they don't actually have pleasure of just penetrative sex. And the same with like foreplay and the arousal phase. So it's interesting to just hear where they're coming from and just making that little bit of a difference. I've also heard some had said that they have like performance anxiety. So they just don't know if they can keep it up that long, or they feel like they're not good enough. Um, what can lead to like performance anxiety? What are like
Yeah, I mean, most of what I've just shared before can also be things that lead into performance anxiety. But one of
yeah,
the key things that I notice with guys is like the, I suppose, the expectation that they place upon themselves to be the sole proprietor for their partner's pleasure, right? Like their erect penis is the only thing that's going to give their partner pleasure. And so a lot of guys put expectation and pressure and, you know, I suppose like there's this emphasis on like them needing to do that. And if they don't, then sex will be a failure. His partner won't be satisfied. And a lot of guys catastrophize. You know, then she'll leave me. I'll be alone. I'll never be a man. You know, like it becomes this really drawn out kind of downward spiral of all the things that he's making this lack of erection mean, or this coming quickly mean, right? So it's kind of two sides of the same coin,
yeah.
premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction. And so that thought process of like, God, I need to get an erection, otherwise my partner's not going to be satisfied. She's going to leave me. I'm not going to be good enough at sex. Or God, I got to last longer, otherwise I'm going to come quickly and the sex is going to be bad. And my partner's going to like not be satisfied. That anxious thought process is the very thing that is going to make you come quickly or stop you from getting an erection. A simple nervous system education piece here is like erections and engorgement need parasympathetic nervous system activation in order to happen. Parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest response, your relaxation response. When you're doing deep, slow breathing and you're able to relax, that's when you get erect and engorged. And so if you're stressed out in your sympathetic nervous system because you're anxious and those thoughts are like taking over, you're really in your head and you're worried about your performance, you're going to struggle to get an erection. If you are able to get an erection because you're able to relax enough to get that engorgement and get that blood flow, but then you're worried about coming quickly, then you're going to activate your sympathetic nervous system again. And we know that ejaculation is a function of the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is your fight or flight response. It's your survival response. And people are familiar with like fight or flight, but there's a couple of other F's that go on to the end of that. There's freeze, feed, and if you want to be vulgar about it, to fuck or to fornicate. Some people like to say fawning or friending. And so ejaculation is actually a part of that survival response. You keep
Ah,
yourself alive in the sense that you're passing on your genes and surviving that way rather than
yeah.
eating to keep yourself alive, for example. So like our body doesn't know the difference between a survival response to a threat like a saber-toothed tiger compared to the threat of like not being a good lover, right? Our body just has that response. And so guys will come quickly because they're activating their sympathetic nervous system, which triggers their ejaculation response. So simple approach to performance anxiety is, and again, this much easier said than done, I recognize, but for the sake of simplicity, is slow down. You don't need to rush. No one's going anywhere. In fact, the more time you take, the more pleasure you're going to experience. Breathe. So drop your breathing down into your diaphragm, down into your belly. If you've ever done a yoga class or a meditation class or done some breath work, even like you'll know that breathing down into your diaphragm, down into your stomach, is one of the ways of engaging your parasympathetic nervous system and relaxing. Another one is, and I've kind of said slow down in the general sense of like, you don't need to rush to sex, but then slow your touch down as well. Slow your stimulation down. So rather than hard, fast, friction-based stimulation, which I'm not saying there's anything wrong with, but if you want to like learn how to manage that performance anxiety, slow the stimulation down as well. So I'm talking like slow thrusting, if it's oral sex or digital sex, using fingers or, whatever, slow and even light touching as well. So rather than firm friction based, movement, slow movement, slow touch that allows you to be mindful of the sensations that you're experiencing and be in your body more as well. Usually when we like hard and fast, it's kind of like so friction oriented and so like performance oriented that still in our head and not really noticing the sensations in our body. And that's going to shoot yourself in the foot when it comes to like being present with your partner and being present with what you're feeling. And that's what you want to do, is you want to get out of your head and into your body. Performance anxiety is everything's happening in your mind. Simple strategy is do whatever you can to get into your body, into your feeling body, into noticing sensations. And that's going to be helpful for you, either experiencing enough sensation to get your erection and relax into it, or experiencing enough or being aware of these sensations enough that you can be in control of like how close you're getting to ejaculation and lasting longer. It's the same kind of principle, just applied slightly differently. So that's hopefully makes sense. I don't know if I rambled enough there.
No, totally makes sense. The same, it's similar for women, like when they are too much in their head about, oh, I need to come quickly, so he's satisfied that he made me come, or they're drifting off with their thoughts. What am I going to cook for dinner? Oh, hang on, actually, I have sex. How can I be more present? So it's one of the women challenges, and it's the same. Slow down, use your senses. What can you feel? What can you taste? What can you touch? Step into like your deeper belly breathing, open yourself up, and then you are more present. It's all about slowing down and more present. So either way, if you're a man, if you're a woman, if you want to be sexually or just pleasure in general, experience pleasure over the day, even outside the bedroom, is being present. If you're going outside for a walk, what can you see? What can you smell? The wind that you can like feel on your skin. This being more present, being more pleasurable. Welcome, pleasure being. I am so lit up meeting you here. I am Patricia. I grew up as the good girl, high achieving, performing, functioning, unable to receive. And after surviving my DV marriage, I spent years rebuilding the safety within my body and alchemizing that disconnection into pleasure, to feel deliciously turned on by myself, in my life, business, motherhood, and relationships. Somatic pleasure is the felt pleasure, the one that you can't perform and you can't think your way into it. I am the founder of Pleasure Lit, your pleasure lit from within. I am the best-selling author of The Pleasure Lit Way and an award-winning pleasure explorer and educator. I have explored over 400 pleasure toys, countless pleasure practices, and studied over 20 certifications. If this sparked something inside of you, go to pleasurelit.com.
I like to say to the guys that I work with, like, what's something that they enjoy doing? Because a lot of guys are maybe a little bit reluctant to use the word pleasure to describe their, because there's connotations, at least in my opinion, that pleasure is like feminine or like not masculine. And some guys have resistance to that. So I work with a lot of guys who they go surfing or they go to the gym or they play sport. And so I say, all right, I guess you do those activities because you enjoy them, and they can be like, I acknowledge, it's fun, it's enjoyable, like feels good, it feels good to like lift weights and kind of feel that soreness in the body. It's a good soreness. Okay, great. So I'll get them to go and do those activities and invite them to be more aware of like where it feels good in their body, right? So maybe they're surfing and they notice that it just like feels good in their hips and legs, which are like in the water. It feels like nice to have kind of the water against them. It's like, great, let's build on from that. Like that's an awareness of what feels good. And then I might introduce the word pleasure. Well, does that feel pleasurable for you? Would you label that as like a pleasurable sensation? Really emphasize the full spectrum of pleasure here, from the subtle
Oh, yeah.
and the not so sexually explicit to like the really intense and erotic, like there's a full spectrum of pleasure that you can experience. It doesn't have to be just in the bedroom. Same for guys that are going to the gym. They might do a set and then pop the weights down, and they might say, yeah, like that, it feels, that burning sensation of like working the muscle feels good. It's like, all right, well, there's obviously some intensity and some maybe pain there, but also there's some pleasure to it, right? Like you wouldn't do it if it didn't like feel good in your body. If it was like uncomfortable and painful and made you feel like crap, you wouldn't do it, right? So
Yeah.
there's an element there of like bringing in this awareness to an existing activity that they're already doing, and those are like quote unquote like masculine activities, right? Like going to the gym and surfing and doing things like that. So that's because I agree with you. All those practices of like going for a walk and noticing the air on your skin, like I love going out for a walk in nature. What I have found though is like if I just recommend that to guys without a lot of context, they won't do it.
Yeah.
They need something that's like makes them still feel
That's,
like a man,
yeah.
and that's fine. I don't mind that. I go to the gym and I'm an athlete as well, but like I got to meet men where they're at when it comes to like
Um,
engaging them and enrolling them in this pleasure.
I'm an advocate for weightlifting too. Just this morning, I said on my stories, oh, I've got my home gym back. And the first thing in the mornings when I do a weightlifting session sets me up for the day. That post-workout high, I feel
Mm,
confident, I feel strong. That sensation in my body, as you just said, this is like that little bit of burn that feels pleasurable even when I'm sore the next day. And then also like the shape of the muscles. And it's just like overall, it's like a very pleasurable experience. So I can totally relate to that one.
nice, nice. Well, I'm glad that
What
that landed.
what can you recommend for partners to support men when they have performance struggle, anxiety issues?
So one of the biggest things that I recommend is what's called the no big deal mentality. So
Mhm.
if your partner in their performance anxiety, either that manifests as struggling to get or maintain an erection or coming quite quickly, those are usually the two ways that performance anxiety manifests, is to treat it as no big deal. Okay, I'm not going anywhere. No worries. So you're struggling to get an erection. We don't need to have an erection to have sex. I'm still interested in being pleasure. Let's get some toys out. Let's like use our fingers. Let's use your tongue. Like let's have a sexy massage. Let's go into the shower. Whatever it is, right? There's other ways of decentering the penis in that instance
Mhm.
and focusing on pleasure and keeping that momentum going. And again, the principles there are slowing down and relaxing and focusing on pleasure. It's the combination of relaxing and getting into the parasympathetic nervous system and adding in pleasurable sensations. They're going to help him get that erection back or maintain his erection in the first place. So the no big deal approach in that context looks like that. The no big deal approach in the context of your partner coming quite quickly, again, is like, hey, that's all right. I'm not going anywhere. I'm still here. There's other things that we can do. Again, just because you've come doesn't mean the sex has to finish, right? That's a big story for a lot of heterosexual couples. Is like once he's come, then sex is done. Hollywood trope of like roll over, have a cigarette, and go to sleep. But it doesn't have to be, right? And I would argue it shouldn't be. But there's so many other things that you can do after an ejaculation. Again, you've got hands, you've got feet, you've got a whole body, you've got a mouth, you've got tongue, you've got toys. Even there's a whole bunch of things that you can do with your partner that don't need to be, again, penis oriented. So again, the same principle as like decentering the penis. And maybe it looks a little bit slower in that instance because I know a lot of guys after they come are a little bit like kind of like lower energy and they need to like slow down a bit and so maybe the focus isn't on you, then maybe the focus is on your partner in those moments as you build up some of that momentum and that steam again. And usually if you go for round two after you've ejaculated, if you go through your refractory period, which is anywhere between like 10 to 20 minutes depending on the guy, then usually round two you last a little bit longer. That's like a common strategy that some guys will utilize. They might know if they're having sex that night, they might masturbate earlier in the day and ejaculate, and they will use that as a
Ah.
strategy for helping them last longer the second time. So you can
Now
do
I
that. You
know.
can go for round two. Yeah, yeah. So that's a little strategy.
Because I had that, I did date a guy before, and he's like, yeah, now before our first date, I masturbated at home. So just, and I'm like, why would you do that?
Yeah. So it's a way of discharging some of that, like again, the sexual tension and like the anticipation, which can push you over the edge because it's exciting and arousing and in still in a sense like a sympathetic nervous system
Yeah.
activation. So one of the ways of like letting go of that some guys do is masturbate, ejaculate, and that kind of like brings you back down to a more relaxed space.
Where could people find you if they want to work with you and find out more about what you are educating on?
I've got two ways people can get in touch with me. First is through social media. I'm at the Cam Fraser on all social media platforms. I'm predominantly on Instagram. That's where I put a lot of effort into. The other way is through my website, which is cam-fraser.com. And the website has like links to my podcast. I've got a podcast called Men, Sex, and Pleasure, which is conversations like this about male sexuality. And that's kind of it. Those are the two ways. Reach out. I'm open to receiving messages. If people want to just shoot me a message and say, hey, I've got a question, I'm usually pretty good at answering questions online. So happy to do that. But
thank you for coming onto the podcast. I think this is so valuable for everybody who's listening, especially for my male following, but also for the women who maybe are in a relationship and just want to really support their man. And yeah, it's really interesting. Thank you. I've got one last question, and we're going to leave the audience with that. This is
right.
usually, what is your number one tip for self-love and pleasure for men?
Be curious about your cock. So what I mean by this is like there's nothing stopping you from just exploring and discovering the different ways that your cock experiences pleasure. I mean, I speak to a lot of guys about the way they masturbate, and they're doing the same thing every single time. And it's very regular, it's very routine. They've just got an ingrained kind of pattern and habit when it comes to their masturbation. So I want to really invite people to like be curious. Like you can touch your cock in so many different ways. I just finished like a 30-day self-pleasure practice where I gave a different self-pleasure activity, which involved stimulating your cock in 30 different ways, you know, and that's only scratching the surface. There's so many other things that you can do to explore the different types of sensations that are available to you, both when you're erect and when you're flaccid. You know, your flaccid penis has the same amount of nerve endings in it as your erect penis does. You don't gain any more by being erect. So you can experience pleasure in your flaccid penis. You know, extend that curiosity then to your anus, right? And your perineum, your lower abdomen, your groin, the rest of your body, right? Like there's a curiosity that's going to be the cornerstone of your sex life if you're able to like lean into it. And you know, with that curious exploration, there might be some shame that pops up. There might be some stigma and taboo, or like some joy and some celebration. All that's very welcome. Like allow yourself to be curious about those things and really process it. You can do it with a partner. You know, you can invite them to be curious about your body, and you can extend your curiosity to their body as well. I think it's the cornerstone of a thriving self-pleasure practice and a thriving sex life, is to just like lean into that curiosity, that playfulness, that wonder and discovery that's available to you when you start to really explore, you know, the sensations that are there.
I love that one. Thank you so much for that.
No worries.
When you've liked this episode, make sure to follow and subscribe to the channel, and also share it along so we can spread more pleasure into this world. Feel free to tag me so I can reshare the love. You can access my free workshop at pleasurelit.com/links. Sending you lots of love and pleasure. Mwah.